All right, we're starting recording. I open the show the same way every single time, which is, who are you?
Do you know what? I watched the Fiona interview and I knew you were going to say that, and I didn't even prepare myself to answer that question. I'm that unprepared person who comes onto streams and rambles into mics until people make me stop.
I can run
Chris
with that.
Bissette.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's how I want you to name me in the thing.
Credits, yeah.
Who am I? I'm Chris Bissette. I'm a RPG person from the UK. I wrote a game called The Wretched last year that a lot of people seem to like, and I'm extremely online on Twitter, and somehow people keep wanting to talk to me, and I've not figured out why yet.
To be fair, I feel like it's 50-50 talk to you and at you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that happens when you've developed a following, and you have quickly.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I remember, like, I think looking at your follower account a couple months ago and just being like, when the fuck did...
Yeah.
What?
I don't look at it. I remember hitting 1,000 followers and being like, that's too many. And now it's like nearly 5,000. How the fuck did that happen? I don't like
I
it.
have to think it's so a thing you didn't mention, but I think bears mentioning because a lot of I think the conversation around you in recent months has shifted from the Wretched, right? Which I think for a while there, like, that was what you were known for, right? And I think rightfully so. It's a dope game. It's a pretty book. And like the Wretched Alone SRD like gave rise to a bunch of other things, and yeah, like there's
it did well.
It did well, and I think it both did well. I hope financially, and it's had an impact.
Yeah, if I could give one piece of advice to aspiring RPG people, it's get covered by Shut Up and Sit Down. It will literally change your life.
Yeah, press.
Press.
But yeah, I mean, you know, there was up to a point where it was like Chris, the dude who did The Wretched. And I feel like very recently, although people haven't forgotten that, there's now this like Chris, the dude who does the review threads.
Yeah, which has only been the past month, really, but that's really become a thing. And I keep saying this is not a review, but people keep calling them reviews. Hey, what is a review, really?
And frankly, we're just so starved for coverage, I think, that it's like...
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I did, because I've been doing like big box games, like, you know, I did like Pathfinder and 13th Age and shit that people have heard of, because I didn't want to step on anyone's toes by doing like indie stuff. And then I was chatting to Nevin Holmes, who wrote Gun and Slinger, and I was like, can I do a thread on Gun and Slinger? Like, will you mind if I do that? Because we're quite good friends now. And they were like, yeah, sure, do it. And they got an interview from an email from Indie Press Revolution, like off the back of that thread. So like, I don't know how I've built a platform, but it...
Oh, you have.
I can leverage it for good.
I mean, to be nice. I think there's a world in which like you doing a big thread could lead to like a Dicebreaker and a Tabletop Mag piece, which could be like, you know, 100x the sales off the back of that for some people.
It's a terrifying amount of responsibility, like that, especially Nevin saying they got that email from IPR. I'm like, shit, I really need to watch what I say on Twitter now, because like...
I mean, there's the school of thought that says, you know, yeah, I really got to watch what I say on Twitter now. And I get it, and I respect that. And certainly from like a personal mental health standpoint, it's a lot easier to do that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I do worry. I do worry that is essentially the mental trap that gets us to the place where all the coverage is only the big corporate games.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Like, if you only ever talk about things that are safe to talk about because they're safe. I mean, like, I took a big step back from Twitter after the first thread where I was just reading Pathfinder 2E.
That one went ugly.
Yeah, and I said, I read Pathfinder 2E, I super liked it. I picked up, I can't remember which adventure it was. one of the adventures and was like, I want to run this, and then I realized that like the stat blocks to run it aren't in the book, and like there's no stat blocks in the core rules, and I was like, oh, fuck you, Pathfinder, you're really expensive. And like I didn't know that all the monsters are online, and like their fan base fucking shat in my mouth over it. And so I took a big step back from Twitter as a result of that. And then I did the other review threads as like a fuck you to the Pathfinder community, really. Like, I'm going to talk about games that aren't your game, then get fucked. But like, everyone involved in Pathfinder whose opinions I actually give a shit about was super cool about that thread, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know several people on the team, and they're, like old heads who have existed only in the trad world. And the like kind of stuff that we do is always like, oh, those weird little kids over there.
Oh, those kids put games on business cards. How cute.
When they think of indie games, they're probably thinking of something that's like older than some indie designers working today.
Yeah, totally.
But they're not like bad people.
No,
right?
not at all.
It's the fan base that often is just where you don't want to be.
Like, fandom is and always will be cancerous. Like, I came up through fiction. Like, before I was writing games, I was writing fiction, and like you do fiction workshops and you fucking grow a thick skin fast.
Yeah.
Like, if someone wants to shit talk my games on Twitter, then fine, do it. Apart from that one guy who accused me of fraud, but he can fucking step in traffic.
I'm sorry, what?
Did you miss that?
Yeah.
That was the last time I took a step back. Remember, I did a dragon game.
Yes.
That was like a shit post that turned into a game.
Yeah.
And I put it out for free as pay what you want, and like Dicebreaker picked it up, and that was mad. A game I wrote in a weekend that brought in like $1,000 worth of sales because Chase liked it. That was crazy. But then like 3 months later, I'm in the gym. It's like 5:30 in the morning, and I start getting all these notifications on Twitter, and it's some guy being like, so I can't remember what his exact words were, but basically he was like, there's no game here. I paid money for this. Did you just write this game to siphon money from your followers? And I was like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, wow. Out the gate.
It was a free game. I didn't force you to pay $4 for it, you prick. But then, out of spite, I wrote a commentary, like a designer's commentary of a dragon game, and released it. And now, like 6 months later, everybody's doing designers' commentaries. So, like, that's really cool.
It's wild how you don't need to have what for the rest of the world is a following, right? Like, if I think of like a following or people who have fandoms built around them or whatever, often they have, hundreds of thousands of people who are aware of them, millions.
There are indie wrestlers wrestling in car parks in like buttfuck Wisconsin, who you and I have never heard of, who've got 30,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, RPGs are a small business.
And for us, it's, you cross that. I think about it. I don't even make games, and I've got like 2,000 people following me, right? I tweet some shit, and people come at me for no particular reason, and I'm like, why? I'm a nobody. I am not any more. I know some more people.
Yeah.
But like there aren't that many strings I could actually pull that would like actually like do me anything or make me money or like advance my. If I could, I'd be pulling them and would have been pulling them this whole time.
Right. If I could get rich, I'll be getting rich. Like,
it'd be fantastic. It's wild. It's wild. Yeah.
Twitter's a weird place.
It really is.
And it's like, I've been on Twitter since 2009, and I still sometimes use it the way I used it in 2009, and you just can't fucking do that anymore.
No, I mean, no, absolutely not.
Like, it's not
the same platform.
No, I mean, I realized nothing is the same after 12 years, but in my brain, that was like last week. So
yeah, no, I get it. Hell, I'd say it wouldn't even. It's not even the same as it was in like 2019.
No, it's not at all.
Let alone like I've seen multiple generations of designers, multiple generations of like discourse and acceptable like types of discourse. And I've only been in analog games since 2014.
Yeah, like I mean, I've been doing cons and stuff for a lot longer, but as far as the internet's concerned, I started doing stuff in like 2016, and that was on the DMs Guild.
Mm-hmm.
So I was involved in like a very specific subset of the D&D 5th edition community.
Sure.
I hate the word community, but 5 years ago, and like I've only stepped into like indie spaces beginning of 2020, end of 2019, like.
Oh, so
And
that's
like,
a question that I wanted to ask.
yeah.
How did that shift occur for you?
So the 5e stuff was literally just like I hadn't touched games in a very long time, and then I got back into gaming because of fucking Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think Mercer mentioned on one of the streams, oh, here's a class that I made. I put it up on the DMs Guild. That's the new thing that Wizards of the Coast have done. You can put stuff up. And I used to do stuff in 3rd edition under the OGL, and I hated working under the OGL because, you know, everybody hates working under the OGL. It's awful.
Terrible.
It's just a nightmare. And so I was like, oh, cool. You know, DM's Guild. I didn't really think about the rights aspect of it because I just wanted to put some shit out for fun. And I was like, oh, there's no fucking, I don't have to worry about the OGL. I can just write shit and put it up. And so like I got into D&D doing that. And then like I had a really bad breakup after a couple of years. And
like in life or
with life?
Okay,
like
gotcha.
a really horrible bad breakup. And my ex was the person who I'd played D&D with, and so that fell apart. And I was like, I didn't want to touch D&D because of like that association.
Sure.
Because that was like a horrible fucking abusive relationship that I got out of. And so I took a year off completely from everything. And when I came back, I was like, I really want to write stuff. I've really enjoyed doing games. I'm not ready to go back to D&D yet. So what else can I do? And then I did. I was doing some D&D freelancing for Onyx Path, which I didn't enjoy. And then not because of Onyx Path, just because of the work. Like it didn't click with it. And then I did, then Zine Quest 2 rolled around, and I was like, fuck it, I could write something for Zine Quest.
Okay.
And I ended up writing Under the Floorboards.
Yeah,
which is
that's right.
About the borrowers. Yeah. And then COVID happened. And like, I didn't get furloughed or anything. I was still working because I work in healthcare, but the volume of my work dropped to the point where I could take a laptop to work. And so I spent 4 months last year sitting at my desk at work, just writing shit. And then the Wretched happened, and then it just fucking snowballed from there, basically.
Okay. I totally forgot you had done Under the Floorboards.
I have that game. I just forgot it was you. Yeah, it's a game from a different time. It's pre-COVID.
And God, that's only Zine Quest 2.
It's pre-COVID in the Western world, I should say.
Yes,
you know,
sure.
That was written as it was hitting Italy and lockdowns were starting, and I finished Floorboards.
I mean, God, that's when this project got started. I mean,
I forget about it all the time.
Yeah, it seems like it's been with us so much longer than it has been.
It seems like much longer than not even 18 months.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe we're in August now, 18 months-ish.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah. It's been a year.
Jeez. It's been a fucking decade just packed into a year. Okay, I need to clear my head of that thought.
Sorry about that. God, D&D and COVID in one sentence. That's not what you want.
No. 15 minutes in, and we're both just like, shit. All right, so I mean, I normally save this for later, but like, it's a good way. Like, I don't know what's next, right? Like, you are plugged in, even if you've taken a step back from Twitter. You have, frankly, influence. and you
Weirdly.
have undertaken a project in the past month that has given you like probably a more detailed overview of some big titles than a lot of people have,
Yeah.
honestly. Because close readings of the sort you do, I think we all pretend that we do them,
Yeah.
and by
Like
and
I
large,
pretended that I did them until the past month.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
I would absolutely not if I didn't have to, and that's
Yeah.
that's it. I know
Like,
that
this
about myself at
is
this
just
point. I have to.
yeah.
Uh,
This has been an excuse to get some books off my shelf and read them.
mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I almost wish I still had that excuse. When I get books, I just wait until they hit a certain number that fits into a box, and then I box them up and I put them in the attic. Um,
I'm about to move house, so there's a lot of that happening right
yeah,
now.
I'm a little worried about the ceiling, to be honest.
Yeah, books are heavy.
Yeah, they are. But yeah, given what you see, this can be answered as what do you think's coming. This can be answered as what would you like to see coming. But I think you knowledge-wise sit in an interesting intersection of having done work in the trad world originally, looking at closely what the trad world looks like today, and then being pretty enmeshed in the indie community. Like you straddle that line.
Yeah. It's so hard to predict what's coming, and I wouldn't want to try and predict. What I would like to see is, and I'm guilty of this as well, I want to see people stop writing systems. Like, we have enough systems. Support them, write content for them, which I'm going to start doing. Like, I do a Patreon every month, and as soon as I can, I'm going to start it up again. And that initially was like producing a game a month, and I'm going to pivot that to like content for games as well, like modules and shit. Because like there's so many really cool games that have been released, especially in the past 12 months when like half the world hasn't been doing day jobs, and they're just like under the floorboards. They're just like languishing on shelves, not getting supported. I'm guilty of it. I think everyone's guilty of putting out games and not supporting them. And I would really like to see people like pivot to, cool, here's a game that I made that I'm really proud of. Let's fucking put some content out for it. Like the mouse for it, Kickstarter has just gone live.
Yep, a lot of good designers attached to that one.
A lot of good designers doing really cool adventures for it. Obviously, the big draw for a lot of people is that the box set is coming back into print.
Yeah, and that's also an interesting shift in the past couple of years toward box sets.
I love it so much. Like, I grew up in, my first game was second edition AD&D.
A lot of box sets for that one.
Yeah, so I'd started with the first Quest box set, which was the Mystara like starter set that had the CD and the minis and shit. So in my head, like, trad games come in boxes and have like 4 books and maps and minis and dice and shit. And it's so I know they're expensive to produce, but it's so nice to see them coming back. Like, I really love it. Like, I've got Black Hack sitting here waiting to be read as well.
Oh, nice. I wish I'd grabbed that one when they were doing the Kickstarter for that. Every now and then it pops up on eBay, but it's always way too expensive.
It was just, I spotted it just like in my local gaming store, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Didn't even know what it was. I'd never heard of Black Hack. I just saw the devil horns on the cover and was like, that's cool. I'm going to buy that.
See, that's what I think is really. So under a lot of what you'd said, I think there's this assumption that we have in the hobby, pretty much at every level, that largely role-playing games function like board games as a product category. Right? So everyone makes systems, and we don't see that as inherently an issue, and I think all the evidence points to it kind of is. But that's how board games work.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this constant like, okay, well the stores want to buy new games, but new games don't move. And they don't want to buy adventures, but adventures move. And so then all I end up doing is picking up D&D. But then on the same side, the box set, right? I think the box set actually does move. It's expensive to produce. But like it's been a while since I've traveled, but for years, whenever I traveled anywhere at all, I would always find the hobby store.
Uh-huh.
And let me tell you, box sets get picked up.
Yeah.
They're expensive to produce, but like, if I'm not a role player, if I'm not in the community, if you can sell me everything in one package, maybe I never play it, but I'm much more likely to buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I picked up the Simba Room box set.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you say it? I don't know how you
That's
say
how
that
I
word.
say it. So
Yeah, I'd never heard of it, but I picked it up purely because it was in a box and it looked fucking cool, and I didn't know anything about it, and I was like, I'll buy that. Same as Black Hack.
yeah, and it's like, for whatever reason, they sit in my mind differently. Like, I have 1,000 books, and I'm already not getting to them, but I don't
Yeah,
have that many box sets.
I don't have any box sets, although I do because I grew up in AD&D.
Yeah.
I don't have many new box sets. So it's like, Ben, Panda Theist
Yeah, yeah.
on Twitter. He did a thread, God, it would have been like July last year, I think, where he was talking about, what's it, Veblen or Veblen goods. Again, it's a word I've read and never heard
Veblen
pronounced.
goods. Yeah.
Yeah. Where they kind of break the law of supply and demand,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're luxury goods, they're status symbols, and like price isn't linked to scarcity,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not linked to demand. They just cost what they cost, and people buy them because they want to have them. And that's what a box set is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take a book and a zine of an adventure, and you go, please buy these, and people go, oh, $20, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you stick them in a box with some art on the front, and people go, $50, that's really cheap. And it's
Yeah.
the same shit.
100% same shit.
Same shit, just in a box, and people
Yeah.
want it.
I mean, oftentimes. Okay, so this is. I was gonna say oftentimes there's less in them than in the books, but that's not
Mhm.
one. That's not inherently true. And
No,
two, the question of what matters, right? Like,
yeah, and like
if
define less.
if I added up the rules content and like stats and all that included in, say, like the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu Keeper's book and like Investigator's book together,
Mhm.
right? Like they're DMG and PHP. And then I look at the starter set that they released last year, maybe the year before. That starter set has less.
Yeah.
Has less in terms of page count, less in terms of word count. I can't take that starter set and play a game for 10 years with it.
Mhm.
But it has a lot of things that make me far more likely to actually play the game.
And you can take it, put it on the table, and be playing within half an hour, which you can't do with the book.
No.
So it may have less. Like, I was thinking about this with the Pathfinder 2E starter set that I picked up after I read Pathfinder, and the Simba Room box starter set. Like, yeah, they're stripped down versions of the rules. The first Quest one that I got when I was 8 years old is a stripped down version of AD&D. But you open the box and you're playing. And
I mean, this is
I can't do that with the book.
The great comedy, I think, of trad design principles is, if I really take that to heart, like what that implies, trad books shouldn't be as big as they are.
No, they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and the financial incentives are even there to not make them as big as they are.
Yeah.
And so it becomes it's ideological.
Yeah, I started reading the AD&D 2nd edition Player's Handbook today because I haven't read it in 20 years.
Sure.
And it doesn't have all the rules to play the game in it. You explicitly need the Dungeon Master's Guide as well, because it hasn't got rules for like XP level limits. It hasn't got rules for giving out XP. They're all in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And what's the point I'm trying to make? Everyone in trad, especially, are just copying the D&D model that goes back 40 years.
Yeah.
Of you need 3 books to play this game, without critically thinking about why are we copying this model.
Yeah, the main critical leap, I think, that was taken was, maybe we don't make 3 300-page books, we make 1 600-page book.
Yeah, DCC,
Yeah.
looking at you. But even then, like, I would rather have, like, DCC sort of represents everything that I hate about trad games because it's massive and it's got subsystems for fucking everything. But it's also one of the most fun. Like, we played DCC together. It's the most fun I've ever had playing a role playing game, and I don't know how it's done that. But you only need one book to run it.
I mean, I would argue you don't even need the book to run it.
You don't.
Right?
You need the quick start because everyone just plays funnels. Nobody
Yep.
plays high level DCC.
And that's I think the thing, right? Like the DCC quick start is to an extent what trad box sets are discovering, right? Like
Yes.
you don't need the rule book, right? In theory, if I were going to play a DCC game for multiple years in a row every week, I couldn't just do funnels, and I would need, you know, the class information and all the tables and the magic spell lists and stuff. And having played like mid-high level DCC, it's fun. It's just a dramatically different game.
Yeah.
But I don't need those to start playing, right?
No.
And I think up until very recently. Okay, so here's I think a distinction, right? Because I'm thinking about quick starts for trad games now. And a lot of them, it's not a simplified version of the game, right? A funnel is like fundamentally a just very, very bare bones version of the game. The mechanics of the game are different. That is not how most quick starts function, right?
No.
They are just bad overviews of complex rules that exist elsewhere that you need from the very beginning. And I almost think that like it's not the quick start model, it's the funnel model, right? It is you start the game with fewer rules.
Yeah.
It's video games, right? It's tutorialization. Yeah. I give you 5 out of 100 powers to begin with. And you don't even need to know about the other 95, right? It's not that you pick from a large list. They're just not.
You don't even get told about them. Yeah. That's one of the things that Simba Room does. It gives you like 4 spells that you can use, and even one of them is even like, you probably won't use this. This is just if you decide you want to advance. It's what I did with, like, I've got this Dice Souls game that I'm writing that is 7 months late at this point because 2021 got in the way.
Yeah, time, not reason.
Time. But I put out the quick start for that, and that's like, here are simplified rules of the game. But I explicitly wrote that, like, I took the video game tutorializing thing and was like, I'm just going to teach you how to play this game as you read through the quick start, rather than you having to read it, then play. You play along with it, which I don't know if that's, I don't know what point I'm trying to make.
No, I mean, it's cool. Like, I think the point is, yeah, you've recognized the same thing and are putting it into action, right?
Like going back to the thing about funnels and DCC and like nobody playing it really at high level, I think one thing people need to start recognizing is that you need to make stuff geared towards the play culture that exists for your game, not the play culture you want to exist. Like, I've been working on a thing, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say who it's for.
Sure.
But it's a 5th edition thing that's work for hire, like freelance thing. But it's explicitly me trying to bring funnel and different styles of play to 5th edition.
Okay.
So I wrote like level 0 character creation rules for 5th edition. I wrote a funnel adventure, and then the people I'm writing it for handed it off to playtesters because they playtest all their shit. And like, I've spent 2 years working in, or a year and a bit working in like indie games and OSR and not touching 5th edition.
Sure.
So I don't know what the play culture is like for 5th edition. And all the feedback I got was like, players don't know how to deal with this. Players don't know how to deal with this. Like, they didn't know what to do here. Can you give them some options here? And I'm like, it fucking blew my mind because I'm so used to playing like OSR games where you go in with like bare bones character sheet and just make shit up. And like these 5e play groups were like, oh, but the text didn't tell us what we're meant to do if players do this. And like, yeah, you need to be aware of the play culture for the games that you're writing for, which I think is, like I say, don't write systems, write content. I think that is a hurdle that people will have to get over to write content for games, is you need to know not just the game, but the people who are playing the game and how they play it to be successful doing that, I think.
I mean, I think this is to an extent a big, yeah, I wouldn't even say to an extent. I'd say broadly, probably, from what I've seen, a big part of why people write systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why certain underlying systems become really, really hot, and then everybody writes something for them that isn't content, right? It's a variation or whatever, right? This is 8 years of PBTA, right here. Is back to the we all say that we read the systems, and most of us really don't, right? System mastery is, however much I hate to say it, a precondition for writing for many, many games, right?
Yeah.
Unlike the OSR, I think probably the OSR specifically because of, inbuilt historical knowledge and cultural knowledge and things like that, where you can just write some cool shit and people will figure it out, and that became the play culture.
Yeah. Like, has it got hit dice and an armor class? You can probably figure it out.
Exactly. Oh, the loot seems wrong. I'll fix it. Like, that's very simple. But if you, and I see this in some of the DMs Guild alikes, right? World of Darkness's Storytellers Vault, the Free League open content system, whatever, right? The reason people are not jumping between them as much, although that is what I would expect, right? If I'm a content creator, why don't I just restat, right? Sure, sometimes there's setting, but like I could very easily take a Dark Ages vampire module and make that a 5e module. And just background some of the clans or whatever, right? I almost never see that. And it's because the system mastery of those two, like, those are different play cultures, and those are both trad games. Those are both trad games that have been around for a long time, let alone the play culture of, like, I can't even imagine, like, if someone who had primarily worked making, like, lyric games on itch decided to, like, write something for the DMs Guild. I think it would be fascinating. I would love to see it.
It'd be amazing. People would bounce off it really hard.
Really, really hard. They'd have no idea what they were looking at.
Like, even I talked to my brother about this a lot because we grew up playing AD&D, and then he plays like 13th Age and 5th Edition mainly.
Okay. Sure.
And I'm a massive like evangelist for Brindlewood Bay, Jason Cordova's PBTA game about murder solving grannies that I absolutely love. And my brother had never played any story games, and him and his group bounced off Brindlewood Bay so hard because nothing is set in stone. Because it's a story game, so everything is like quantum until the dice hit the table and the players and the GM make it up on the spot. And even though like he's grown up playing the same games as me, because he's not been playing, because we went in different directions, like him and his group were just like, we can't do this. We don't understand this. What the fuck is this?
And it really is. It's not even, I don't like this.
No, it's, I have no basis for, I have no frame of reference for what this is trying to do.
Yeah. And I see that even with expert audiences, right? I see people who I know have 500 board games and have played all of them multiple times, as well as a bunch of others that they have. They have exposure to lots of different types of storytelling and mechanics, and you like plop some weird itch shit in front of them, and they're just brain short circuits. And it's
I
new.
do it.
Yeah,
I do it as well. I do it with music. Like,
sure.
Sometimes you're just not ready for something. Like some of my favorite bands that I listen to now, I tried to listen to 10 years ago when they were current, and my brain went, what the fuck is that? Don't listen to that. And now I listen to it every fucking day because you just need to rewire that bit of your brain.
But that's
it's
a big
really,
ask.
really strange. Yeah.
Right. I think that's an issue that we have being so as a community versus as like an industry or an overall hobby, right? The designer community. people who find their way to this tend to be the ones who have like the highest tolerance for that mental exercise.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, even a year ago, I was one of these people who was constantly shouting on Twitter at 5th edition people, play other games, play other games, play other games. And I hadn't played all that many other games. I played some. And the more games I played, the more I'm like, A, yes, play other games, but B, like, I've developed so much more patience for people who say, I actually don't have it in me to learn a new game.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us say, oh, you just, all these games are easier to play than 5th edition because 5th edition's X hundred pages of rules and this, that, and the other, and these are all rules light. But if you've never played a rules light game before, like, on paper it's simple, but like, you pick up something like, I don't know, Mouse Ritter or like Knave, and you look at it and you go, right, but where is it all? Where's all the stuff?
Totally.
And you put those players at a table and they're like, with a GM who has never run it, it's different if you've got an experienced GM running it. But if you put those players who've only ever played 5th edition at a table with Knave and say, go, they're going to go, where's the game?
What am I doing?
Yeah. Like, so I've definitely, I've chilled out on that play other games front a lot. I still think people should do it. I still think it'll make their 5th edition games better. But I totally see where the hurdle is now, having spent a year playing as many games as I can physically get my hands on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There are games that I wouldn't even say are like on the outer limits, right? Like, Fate's been around a long goddamn time. Yeah. I can't wrap my head around Fate aspects. I have tried so many times.
Dice and I go, what the fuck are they?
Yeah. No clue.
And I'm not inexperienced.
It does make me wonder, like, because I agree with you on both counts, right? Play other games it's a good developmental thing. You should do it. You should also not harass people about it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if a person comes to me and is like, well, 5e can do literally everything and I have no interest in playing anything else, not because it's difficult for me or like because I think it's just unnecessary and it shouldn't exist. Okay, yeah, now I'm going to fight you.
Yeah.
But most people don't come with that energy.
No. You get some of them, but that's just Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's right? Just the nature of Twitter, right?
That's anonymity. But it does make me wonder, right? Like, because it's a bridge to be crossed, and we're basically saying, hey, walk the whole distance yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what the version of meeting them halfway there is, right? In my work, mostly what I've done is I've just gone one step away, right? I stick with trad games and I just go to another trad game and I just do loops and loops. But that, that can take months and months and months of work.
Like, I look at like current 5th edition play culture, which is very much informed by actual plays and streams, which are all very much informed by what Critical Role are doing, right? People will probably shout at me for saying that. I'm not saying that Critical Role informs what D&D is. I'm saying it informs current play culture.
Especially, I would go further. I'd say Critical Role does inform what current D&D is, but debate for another time.
And I look at the games people are playing, and they're playing one of two kinds of games. They're either playing very technically tactical, crunchy combat games, or they're playing very free-form storytelling games where they barely interact with the actual rules and the dice. And having read a lot of these other trad games in that space the past few weeks, I genuinely think most 5th edition players will be happier playing either Pathfinder 2e or 13th Age, because they both 5th edition is like halfway between the two of them, and 13th Age is like, we're going to take your D&D and put story games into it. And Pathfinder 2e is like, we're going to take what was cool about 4th edition and make it a bit like 5th edition. But even getting them to take that one step away is hard.
It's hard.
And like you say, let people play what they want to play. Let them enjoy what they want to enjoy. But if it can get people away from fucking Hasbro, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, as I think, Jared is the one who I think harps on the point most of all, but lots of people do. The problem with D&D isn't D&D. I couldn't actually give any shits about 5th edition.
I like 5th edition as a game. I enjoy it. I played it for years.
Problem is who sells it.
Yeah. That's it. And it's funny coming from someone whose most well-known game uses Jenga, which is also owned by Hasbro.
Sure.
But, you know,
Yeah.
if I'm a hypocrite, so be it.
Whatever. Let's just say that I have more positive feelings about their toy division.
Yeah, fair.
Still a large multinational organization that does some fucked up shit.
Yeah. And I mean, as well as that, like, they just take up so much fucking space.
They do.
You cannot have a conversation about RPGs as demonstrated right now without talking about the elephant in the room, right? Even when you talked to Fiona, Hasbro came up.
A large amount of the conversation ended up being about Hasbro. Fiona, who works for
Fiona
Exalted Funeral, who has worked with Melsonian Arts Council, like any number of companies we could have talked about.
If anyone was going to not talk about Hasbro, it was going to be Fiona.
Yeah.
And yet,
there we are.
Yeah.
I don't know where I saw it, somewhere on Twitter a while back, but it was, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, but you got to be in a boat.
Otherwise, you just drown.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, most of us aren't in boats.
Yeah. No, that's... yeah, I'd agree with that.
It's a rough situation. My personal strategy, I think, is very similar to yours. You know, that half step away.
Yeah.
I think finding the play group that you're trying to convert's kind of lingua franca, right? Like,
yeah.
Because then I can go in a bunch of different directions, right? What do they play other than D&D? And without judgment, right? Is it Cards Against Humanity? Is it Settlers of Catan? What usually major game that I probably have some other beef with as well?
Yeah,
or the people who make it.
Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah. What else do they play, right? Because that means they have mechanical familiarity with something outside of specifically 5e, and there's probably a role-playing game that does something with that.
Yes.
But if I just shouted them, like, you know, I'm glad Nevin's getting attention. I love Gun and Slinger. I'm really glad that I have a physical copy. I'm not going to a 5e playgroup and giving them that off the bat.
No, it's not going to be someone's first game.
No.
Ever. And Nevin's aware of that. You know, most of the people working in indie RPGs know that the game that they're writing is not going to be someone's first game, and that's fine.
I'd love to believe that. But I think if we had all collectively internalized that message, you'd have a hell of a lot less people yelling at randos on the internet to play other games.
That's true.
Without any qualification, right? Like, there'd be a
Someone
hell of a lot
did
more
tell
nuance.
me after Under the Floorboards came out that they used it to run a game for their like 8-year-old and 6-year-old nieces, and it was their first role-playing game. And I was like, "Holy shit, I've done it! I've fucking done it!"
I think that's actually a really productive avenue, right? Like,
yeah. So Matt Sanders talks about this a lot. How can we, rather than trying to convert 5e players and get a slice of Hasbro's pie, how can we just grow the pie that the rest of us are eating from instead? And like, I think you mentioned using Wretched Alone in like creative writing classes is something that he's talked about, and like he's got all these cool ideas for like ways to approach people who don't know anything about role-playing games and get them hooked without ever mentioning the dragon. I think that's a much more productive use of our time if we want to grow the hobby and the industry than shouting at D&D players.
I mean, I think it's... I don't even think it's just... I think it's a more productive way to do it, right? Like, and this is where I'm always caught between two disparate opinions. One being, you don't have to know anything about the hobby, you don't have to know anything about the industry, just make your art, right? And I think that's a really good way to make interesting outsider art, and I think that stuff often moves the design needle more than anything else.
Yeah.
I think that is firmly disconnected from questions of like, how do we get more players? How do we make more money? How do we sell better? That's industry knowledge, right? And one of the things that I wish even people who had industry knowledge, outside of people who work for like major publishers who sell directly to hobby stores and like go to Gamma and New York Toy Fair and shit like that. Like, even people who are like big names and sell a lot, if you're not a company, you won't know these things. But if you look at the board game industry in the past few years, you're seeing what I think is going to happen if we continue the path that trad games have been doing recently, which is a lot of conversions to 5e, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of trying to steal the 5e player by doing something very, very similar or literally the same, right?
Yeah.
But in a new world so that they come over to your product, right? Because at the end of the day, that's not a recurring sales model that works.
No.
And the only people who buy that type of item consistently for novelty purposes are collectors.
Yeah.
And that does not increase your player base.
No, they don't play them.
Yeah.
In fact, having run quite not a big by Kickstarter standards, but big by like indie RPG standards Kickstarter, I got a lot of messages of people being like, how are you packaging this zine? I'm a collector and I don't want it to be damaged. And I'm like, it's a fucking book that you're meant to use to play a game with. Mm-hmm. Like, does it matter if it's got a crease in the cover?
I mean, here's where I know I'm the asshole. Because I counted the number of files I have that are role-playing games or modules or whatever. I did a file count. I couldn't literally count them if I tried.
Yeah.
I'm at like 37,000.
Fucking hell.
And like I have.
You're never going to use all them.
I have 30-something boxes full of games tightly packed in my attic right now, and the games just keep showing up, right?
Yeah.
For me, collection is. I know I'm that kind of hobbyist.
I mean, like.
Yeah.
You know, this entire shelf is Neil Gaiman because I'm a collector. Like this entire bookcase. Like, last time I moved house, I counted up and I had like 5,000 physical books because I'm a collector. And I used to be that asshole who was like, they have to be in pristine condition all the time.
I buy 2 copies of something if I want to use one.
Regularly bought 2 copies of something. Then I became a bookseller and I worked in a bookshop for 2 years. And I got lots of free books off publishers because I like ran front of store. So I picked I worked in the second biggest bookshop in England.
Okay. Damn.
So like I had some like clout with publishers because I ran front of store and they wanted their books in front of store in my shop.
Sure.
So I got fucking loads of free books. And I also saw the back of the store where we were like ripping the covers off books and sending them back to publishers and putting the rest in the furnace, you know? And so like when you're getting all those books for free and you're pulping them on a regular basis,
it changes.
It changes. You value them as physical objects less. And like now I've gone from being that guy who's like, don't you dare dog eat my books to like, I'm going to buy this book and I'm going to break the spine and put it in my back pocket and carry it around with me all day.
The replaceability is the question for me, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to like a paperback, and when it even comes to like a mass market hardback, right? Like a thing that I can just buy cheaply, it's probably going to be on sale again. Just walk into a bookstore, we'll have a copy. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, like obviously something you get from indie seller that's got a print run of 100, obviously you're going to treat differently.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, like, most of those things exist in PDF format anyway. So, like, I definitely fall down on the side of, like, just use it the way it was intended to be used. But I get it because it was me for a long time. No, but I'm less precious about it now, and I'm especially less precious about it when the 10th person emails me saying, what packaging are you using to send this book 7,000 miles to Australia? And I'm like, could you fuck off?
Let's just say there are things about my view of the hobby broadly that make the preservation far more important than the use.
That's fair, yeah.
But
totally fair.
I recognize that it is actively harmful to my mental health.
Like, I had at one point brown box D&D, not brown box.
Old school OD&D,
original
wood
like
grain.
70s D&D, like in a box with the dice that you coloured in that I got from my dad at some point. And I don't know, in the past decade, it's disappeared. don't know where it's gone. And I looked at replacing it last month, and that thing costs $800 now.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. So, like, I get the preservation thing of it.
I wouldn't even, so like, that's the kind of thing where I would love to have a copy. That's a nice collector's item.
Yeah.
But I know that several copies of it are in the Duke University Library. I know several
it's
copies
being
of it.
preserved by someone.
Exactly. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right? There are things that are. So there's an organization called the Library of Alexandria. Great name.
Yeah.
So it's a touring collection of role-playing games that goes to cons, and they usually have a big room, and they lay out a bunch of books, and they're random. Some of them are really fancy, some of them are not. And every now and then I'll see something in there that makes me aggressively angry that it's just there. Because I know that as basically this doesn't exist except outside of a bare handful of private collections. And I love that now random people can get to check it, but it should be in like a library doing that. Like put it in a place
an actual library.
Yeah. Not just like some dude's crate that he carries around the US with like no training in book preservation. There have been a couple times where like I've seen something and been like, ethically I need to steal this so that I can donate it to someone who knows how to care for it. I will say I have not done that yet, but I still feel it would have been the ethical decision to do so.
Yeah. There is a zine library in Manchester that specifically focuses on self-published stuff. And I've basically, anytime I buy a zine off someone, I buy 2 copies of it and I send one to the zine library just because then I can fuck mine up and it doesn't matter.
Sure, totally. Yeah, no worries. I mean, that's largely what I do. Like, I build archival boxes, I package them, I line them with acid-free paper. You know, I store them. Would I love to keep them in, like, an actually temperature and humidity-controlled space? Yeah, and the moment that I can afford to do so, I will. Yeah. Or just donate them.
Bezos money? Yeah, I would.
Yeah, totally. My first... Is that true? My second internship, I was 14 years old, was at the Science, Industry, and Business Library of New York, which is in Midtown. It's in the building that the University of New York Graduate Center is in. It's a big academic presence. And they have their entire basement, one floor of it, is just archival shelving of the nicest, highest quality sort. And I've always just wanted that. But, you know, until then, I'm going to do what I can to preserve these things. But at the same time, like, I get it. Collectors don't actually move the needle of use.
Yeah.
And it troubles me that for a community, the designer community, let's say, who does so value increasing the pool of players, right? Growing the hobby. So much of what we do from a publication standpoint and a sales standpoint, even if we don't acknowledge it, really has the collector in mind.
Yeah, I get that.
And the incentives there, they're bothersome, right? It's because I want that aim that everyone seems to have, and I just don't think we're going about it smartly.
Yeah. I think people, especially in indie circles, seem to really dislike it when you talk about games as a business.
Yeah.
The second you start bringing money into the conversation and talking about how you want to make enough money to live, it's the same as in like punk scenes. You've sold out, you know?
Yeah.
And that's bullshit. And the fact of the matter is, if you grow the player base so that more people are playing the games, you also grow the customer base, and you make it as an industry sustainable.
Yeah, I'd say thinking about it as a business is a precondition to growing the player base.
I agree. And like, again, I was reading AD&D Player's Handbook, 2nd edition today, and it says in it explicitly two things that actually are relevant to two different things we've talked about in the past, 45 minutes. One is that you shouldn't read the rules before you play. You should play for a few hours with an experienced GM and just play, and then read the rule book, which is how we should be onboarding players to games.
100%.
The other thing it does is says all players and the GM should own a copy of the player's handbook. And I'm like, it's because you're a fucking business.
Mm-hmm.
All right, TSR may have actively bankrupted themselves a decade later by doing box sets and terrible business decisions, but at least in 1989, they were like, we need to focus on this as a business.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should start doing bundles where I'm like, here, buy 2 copies, 3 copies, one to preserve, one to play with, and one to give to a friend.
I would probably so as a retailer, I can back Kickstarters at a retailer pledge, right? Like,
yeah, same.
Fuck it, I'll admit to a crime. I'll often just give those away, right? I'll preserve one, I'll keep one for myself to read, and then I'll give the rest away. And I just count it as a loss.
Yeah.
Right? If people really find it interesting or there's demand or whatever, I'll restock.
Yeah.
But that initial Kickstarter run, it basically uses that, right? Like a collection item, a personal item, and one for a friend.
Yeah.
Except it's, usually 5 or 6 instead of 3. And if that became a normalized, just regular consumer level, where like I didn't have to like provide my EIN or like any of my sales certifications or anything, I just do that as a person, that would be awesome. I would love that. And I imagine a bunch of people would too, right? Especially, I don't know if that would do as well for like a $80 core book or some shit, right? Like that, I don't think people are going to spend $250 at a clip.
$240, no.
Yeah.
But if it's a $10 zine.
If it's a $20 zine, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll drop 60 on a core book, no thought.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I drop 60 on 3 zines, collect one, keep one, give one away?
Totally. Like, why not?
If you do that, let me know, please.
I will. Maybe I'll start doing it this week.
Yeah.
Because I need to clear some stock before I move house anyway. So
you're also a seller. I always forget that.
Yeah. Doing less of it. Like, I'm buying less stuff recently because I am about to move house, so I can't. And like with doing Troll King fulfillment, I'm doing it all myself. So that was like 1,500 books that turned up at my house, plus posters, plus pamphlets. And like the room I'm in is like 9 feet square. Is all the space I have to work with. So like, and there's a mattress in here as well because our landlord wouldn't let us store any furniture. This was a bedroom. It had a bed in it when we moved in. It doesn't have a bed in it now.
Love it.
But so yeah, I've stopped buying stuff recently because I just haven't had the fucking space all the time. But yeah, I'm in theory a retailer as well. That happened fast.
Why didn't you get someone to do fulfillment for Troll King? That blew up big.
Yeah, a few reasons. One was I didn't expect it to blow up, so I didn't arrange it.
Sure.
Secondly was when it did blow up, I thought, I can handle that. I have ADHD, and one of the things with ADHD is you just don't want to let go of control of anything. And yeah, that's it, basically. Like pure bloody mindedness, thinking I can do that, I can deal with that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Never again. Never again.
No.
Like, I did a similar amount of Wretched, and that was fine. But Wretched was just one book. And with Troll King, I've got the book, the pamphlet, and 2 posters. So even though it's ostensibly the same number to fulfill, it's actually 4 times the amount. Yeah. And it's just been a nightmare. I'm nearly done. I've got 60 copies left to send out. I just need to write in them all by hand before I do that.
Have you been writing in them all by hand?
Only 66 of them.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not 1,300 of them. Can you imagine? My hand would be like claws.
It's like that's why I have the camera angle right here, and your hands aren't going above the screen that often. they're all like this.
What people don't know about me is that I'm half lobster as a result of Kickstarter fulfillment.
Trying to think if there's I'm certain there's other. Oh, you know what? Just because I'm always interested. Like, what do you think you're gonna grab next for like the thread reviews?
Good question. I want to do Black Hack because I haven't read it and it's been on my shelf for a year. I bought it the same day I bought Mugborg, and I read Mugborg first and loved it, and then I picked up Black Hack the next day and looked at it, having just read Mug, and was like, I can't read this. This is so boring to look at. Black Hack, I've got Wire Hack, 2nd edition and 3rd edition, and I've read neither of them.
Okay.
So that could be fun to do both and see what's changed. Sure. And I actually want to do AD&D because I haven't read it for 20 years.
Sure.
And there's a big part of me that's like, I want to write a retro clone of 2nd edition. So I might do that.
No,
you know?
No more systems. I'm gonna write a
system. No more systems. Writes a system, yeah. I'm happy to admit to being a complete hypocrite, that's fine. But I also feel like I should do something like, having seen the response to Gun and Slinger and how it actually made like a material difference to Nevin.
Yeah.
I feel like I should also focus on stuff that needs that boost. So I don't know. I've got so much stuff.
I wish I were actually just looking at the Google window right now, because then I could probably actually see what the books are. But in the tiny little window,
they're not in any kind of order.
I'm trying to see, like, okay, they're like unbelievably tiny. Is yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah,
I see Delve.
Yeah, Delve is there. There's a lot of Adam Vass's stuff is here. There's a lot of Best Left Buried. There's a lot of Troika. It's like I said, they're not in any order. So like half of it I've read and half of it I've never looked at.
Sure.
It is what it is, you know. But yeah, and like the shelf above it that you can't see here is like zines. And doing zines would be cool because it wouldn't take me 5 hours because they're only 32 pages long.
Yeah, it's not a 400-page core book.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I could bang out 8 of them in the time it takes me to do a 400-page core book.
I mean, that would actually be really interesting as like instead of one long thread, just like 6 smaller ones.
Yeah.
Something.
Definitely. And like, I didn't intend for it to become a thing. You know, I just was like, I'm going to read this book, and I'm attached to Twitter while I'm doing it, so let's just do it.
Who of us?
But now it's become a thing, you know.
Yeah.
So
I think so much of success in this industry is accidental is maybe too harsh, because there is intention and effort and all of that. But I don't think anyone sets out
things that work.
Yeah, I think we just like, we're doing a thing, and then sometimes it hits really hard.
Yeah, like that was what happened with Wretched. You know, I didn't ever think Wretched was going to take off. I literally just tweeted out, "Here's a cover for a game that I've just spent a day writing," and it fucking exploded.
Yeah.
And then I did the Kickstarter. So you know, you just have to follow what works sometimes, don't you? Like, you can have a plan of what you want to do, but you do also have to, you know, you've got to go where the money goes if you want to do it professionally. Like, I'm within about 4 months of I could do it tomorrow, but I want to get Christmas out of the way. I'm on the cusp of quitting my job and doing games full time now. And that's as a result of following what works. You know, that was Wretched. That was Under the Floorboards, doing surprisingly well and getting me out of debt. That was Wretched, doing really well and like giving me some savings for the first time that allowed me to buy art for things. And then that was Troll King buying me a house. You know?
How well did Troll King do again?
Yeah, Troll King made close to £30,000 on Kickstarter. So that gave me a deposit for a house. And a year ago, a year and a half ago, I was still like in debt massively after a decade of poverty. So it's been a year.
Yeah.
So I'm just having to chase that down now and be like, cool, I want to do this full time. This is the opportunity for me to do it. Do it.
I think about the line, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, a lot. And
Yeah.
I think the key to success in general, and in this hobby, if you're not, born the scion of great wealth, um, is simply, well, you're gonna get punched in the mouth either way.
Yeah.
You gonna change your plan, or you gonna get punched in the mouth again?
Yeah. No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
Is the way I've heard it. But yeah, it's the same. And like, I've got songs stuck in my head now. I was going to say roll with the punches, and then my brain went down a pop punk route. You just have to.
If you want to share the pain, you can.
You don't want me singing.
Yeah, I don't know. I for one am rooting for you. I think you've hit a point where I don't know that you necessarily need anyone rooting for you.
It's nice though.
Yeah, it's nice. I'm glad you've hit that point, and I'm glad that you're like not just resting on it.
Yeah,
right?
I think it would be very easy to sit back and be like, "Cool, I've had a big success."
I think that's most of the time I see it happen. Right? It's very rarely, Dan Sell post Troika, right? Starting a business, hiring a bunch of other people, giving it a good, honest go despite everything. Like that's the rarity.
Yeah, like there's so few people who've done it. Like Dan Sell did it. Zach is doing it with Soul Muppet. Yep. Like Jared does it full time, but he also does like fulfillment and editing, and so he's done a different route for it. Yeah. There are people working full time in the industry that, like, I guess a huge number of people just have no idea exist.
Totally. And you might see a name crop up a few times, and that's probably going to be the best indication, right? Like, yeah. But I promise, even most people who buy their indie games from a store, right, who aren't in the design community, if you said Moonrat Conspiracy, they'd have no fucking idea what you were talking about. No. But they've probably seen Fiona and Jarrett's name.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, even people who are in the design community, how many people know, like, who Jarrett Crader is? Because he's not present on Twitter so much.
He's not around.
He's not around.
But Jarrett, if you're in the Troika Discord or you've worked with Troika people. Yeah. That's about it. Or I guess if you're kind of in the Mosh community.
Yeah.
But that dude is all over a bunch of different things, and he's helped a lot of people do it, and he's working at it full time, and you just wouldn't know. And
like, again, like design, it's mostly people in the design community who look at who's edited a book. So like even someone like Fiona, like she's everywhere.
Yeah, I'd say.
But how many like consumers know who Fiona is?
More people probably knew Fiona from like Discourse.
Yeah.
Than like her actual work, but she is all over the place with work.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
She's brilliant at what she does.
So they do exist, but for every person I see who makes it work full time, I do see a lot who have a success.
Yeah.
And either they just disappear into the ether, which, seeing this community, I don't blame them.
Yeah. I mean, even Dan Sell's not on Twitter anymore.
No, he's gone. I miss him.
Yeah, same.
Or they don't disappear, and they rest on their laurels, and they're real fucking loud, and nobody likes them.
Yeah, and there are plenty of. I'm at that stage now where like half of Twitter has me blocked.
I think you could go that path fully, but I don't think you will.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I unfortunately have this desire to be liked, even though half the time I'm like, don't fucking look at me. But I don't know. If you can't like everybody, and not everybody can like you. You know?
No, totally.
You just have to not actively be an asshole and hope that people recognize that, I think. Or be actively an asshole, but in the right direction.
That's the one. I have no concept of how to be consistently nice. None whatsoever. That is deeply alien to me. That's a language I never learned.
Yeah. I have two modes, like I am lovely and I have time for everyone, and do not fucking look at me. And I'm trying to get better and not being on Twitter when I'm in a do not fucking look at me mood.
It's honestly for the best, especially when you have a follower account because
Yeah.
all they do is
It's
look
just-
at you.
All they do is look at you.
Yeah.
I often wonder how different Twitter would be if they had not called followers and called it something else. Like, how much less like a cult would it be for some people? And how will people
What if they
behave
like
differently?
went all the way culty then? What if they called them like acolytes?
Jesus. Fucking, you have 4,000 acolytes. No,
Yeah.
thank you. No, thank you.
But
even if they called it listeners, like, oh shit, every time I open my mouth, 4,000 people are listening. Maybe I won't open my mouth quite so much.
No, I think it would just attract a very different sort of person who loves the idea of a bunch of people listening to them.
It would attract the same people, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn
it. I mean, look at Facebook, right? They're friends. Sure as shit don't act that way.
Nope.
So
I haven't logged into Facebook in about 6 years, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made.
I was off it for a long time, and then I had a job where that was the primary networking outside of work. And
I would have deleted it if it wasn't for my band, because we have to maintain the band Facebook, because unfortunately I'm in a band and we have a record label that demands us to have a Facebook page and shit. So if I didn't have that, I would have deleted Facebook many years ago, but effectively I've deleted it because I never log into it.
Yeah, I mean, same, right? It is the link to business ads. If I want to put shit up on Instagram, well, I got to do it through Facebook Business Manager.
Yeah. Although I haven't figured out how to make ads work, so I just don't do it anymore.
It's fair. It took me a long time, and I never got much of a return. But,
no, like Dan Sell helped me through it. He spent a lot of time.
He does great with those.
Yeah, he spent a ton of time helping me set it up and telling me how to make it work. And I couldn't make it work, and that's on me, not him. But he spent hours helping me with that shit.
Yeah, I know, not directly from Dan, but from Jared, that Dan does more sales from Facebook and Instagram ads than most trad companies I can think of.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he does.
That's
very
amazing.
Well.
Yeah, I know. I think Bats has had some luck with ads as well. And again, I think they said that Dan had helped them set it up, and it worked for them. But fuck knows why it didn't work for me. I don't know.
Well, obviously you're doing something else right, because you're making a hell of a lot of money in other places. Where...
Yeah, unfortunately, I just need to rely on 1 or 2 Kickstarters a year for the rest of my life.
You're basically the board game industry, so
yeah, I mean that's basically my business model. Like from January, when I go full time, the plan is like I've got the Patreon. I'm going to start up again. That'll bring in like a little bit of money a month. I'm going to put something out every month, and I'm going to do 1 Kickstarter a year. And like, I don't need it to be massive. I need it to be even under the floorboards or D36 sized. You know, make high 4 figures, and that will be enough for me to be full time. I won't be rich. I might not be able to afford to take a holiday.
But you can keep going.
But I won't be working in private healthcare. And that's the important thing.
Priorities.
Yeah. Don't need to be rich.
And frankly, either the industry would need to change dramatically, or you would need to fuck up in a very big way for me to think that you were only going to hit high 4 figures.
Yeah, I mean, you need to, I think with Kickstarter, it's all about the pitch, right? Like D36, and it's all about your expectations going in as well, based on how you feel about how it did, because D36 did 5 figures. But because of where my goals were set, because of what I wanted to do, it felt like a failure. But it actually made more money than Wretched, I think, which felt like a massive success.
That's very surprising. But yeah, expectations.
I think, let me double check that. I don't know if that's true. One of the joys of having no functional short-term memory is that you say things and they're like, was that bullshit? Okay, no. D36 made £9,500. So I think about the same as Under the Floorboards, I think. I can't remember. So it made nearly 10 grand. Yeah, there we go. D36 made just shy of 10 grand. Under the Floorboards made just shy of 4 grand.
Okay.
So, like, Floorboards felt like a massive success, but it only had a very, very small goal. It had a goal of like £700 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with D36, I wanted to do 4 issues of the thing, and my original goal for just 1 issue was 4 grand. So, like, relatively, it felt like a huge failure. Like, I had to put my stretch goals down in order to hit them, which in hindsight I probably shouldn't have done. But, you know, but I think as much as I would love to get away from Kickstarter, you can't argue with the marketing boost that it gives you at the moment.
There's a network effect to it.
Yeah. Like, everything you do is basically going to be similar to or better than your next thing. And I think it's just about every Kickstarter teaches you a lesson about how to better use Kickstarter as well. So we'll see. The next one that I'm doing is my Troika Choose Your Own Adventure Fighting Fantasy style book. We'll see how that goes.
I mean, I think if you're smart about how you advertise and where you hit people, that's God knows there is a market for advanced fighting fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Dan said to me that, and I think Jared may have said this as well, that like they've both been waiting for someone to do it.
Yeah.
So I mean, hopefully
everything from like Against the Dark Master to like the reissues of Advanced Fighting Fantasy to a bunch of other things, like that style of game book has come back hard.
Yeah.
And I think it's largely been ignored by the indie space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of, like we were saying earlier, I think it's got the potential to tap into both the Troika space and people who aren't in indie RPGs. So hopefully it'll do quite well. It's going to have quite a high goal because as well as some amazing art I've already paid for. Like Jared's going to edit it for me, and it's going to be like, it's a novel, so that editing cost is not going to be small. No, but we'll see how it goes. It's also going to be a 30-day Kickstarter, so you know, anything's possible.
Yeah, I mean, and at this point, I imagine you have a large email list you can hit.
I do. Thankfully, that's build an email list. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So much more effective than Twitter.
Best advice I think I ever got early on was anytime you sell a thing, if you can, distribute it through an online platform that allows you to pull all the email addresses into a single spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then just hit that spreadsheet every single time you release anything and keep growing it.
Yeah. I'm actually at a point now where I need to find a new mailing list provider because MailChimp start trying to charge you money when you hit 2,000 people on your list, and I don't want to pay them.
Yeah.
To send an email out 4 times a year. I just don't want to pay them.
Yeah, not worth it.
No.
Or got to start sending more emails to make it worth it.
Yeah, which at the minute I don't have the time for, but when I go full time, maybe I can just be like, one day a month I write an email.
I mean, I think like that's become a thing again. Email newsletters.
Yeah, it has. It's weird how it goes in and out of fashion.
Yeah.
I think the more platforms like Twitter,
which is wow, what's his name? Dude who did Knave.
Jesus Christ, brain's gone blank.
Yeah, wow, this is incredible. And I can't even Google it because then it makes the screen disappear.
Ben something? No.
Well, whatever his name is. This questing beast.
Ben Milton.
Milton, thank you. His newsletter has been doing very, very well for him. The Weird Realms, Weird RPG, the magazine that keeps getting kickstarted that does quite well.
Yes.
They have a newsletter now. They're doing well with that. Bunch of people have.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that might be a nice thing to accompany the Patreon.
Yeah, I think that's probably not a bad shout. I mean, look at someone like John Ford, who's been doing role-playing tips for, what, a decade now?
Yep.
Just purely in newsletter form. And I think, didn't he do it in, like altnet groups before it was a mailing list as well?
I think so, yeah.
Like, that shit never goes... It might go quiet, but it never goes away.
Yeah.
Like, people like MT Black on the DMs Guild.
Yep.
Like, there are people who've transitioned successfully off the DMs Guild and people who haven't. And the ones who've done it successfully, like MT Black and Phil Beckwith and JVC Parry, and I think Ashley as well, Ashley Warren, all spent time building an email list first.
Makes sense. And,
like,
and honestly,
it's a captive audience of people who've explicitly asked to hear about your shit.
It's also a really nice thing about drive-through. Like, there are very few really nice things about drive-through, but
the
I will say
ability to send
drive-through makes
email.
it very easy to pull emails.
Yeah. They don't technically allow you to link to anything off their platform.
Yeah.
Which is a pain in the ass, but yeah. You can still say, hey, I've got a Kickstarter, why don't you Google it?
That's fine. It's like...
One thing I intend to do, which may get me banned from drive-through, we'll see, is I'm going to write, I'm going to put out some Troika backgrounds to coincide with the Kickstarter release.
Okay.
I'm going to release them on itch. I'm going to release them on drive-through. I'm going to send an email out to the drive-through newsletter of people saying, here's some Troika backgrounds, and there's going to be inside the PDF of that product an advert for the Kickstarter that's hyperlinked.
I think that's
because I can't link to the Kickstarter from the email, but I can give them a free product that 3,000 people.
And you can do anything you want in that product.
Yeah. So why not just put up a free advert on drive-through to funnel people to Kickstarter?
Now, here's an interesting question, because the thing that I encounter quite a lot in the regular world outside of games is emails that come through with an attached PDF that's basically just an ad. Could you just do that with drive-through? Does it have to even be a product? As far as I know, the rule is against hyperlinking in the email. Yeah,
you can hyperlink in a PDF.
So I could just design a one-page ad as a PDF.
Upload it to drive-through.
And I can put a hyperlink in the PDF, just attach it.
Because I'm always wary of, like, I'm happy to, like, press the boundaries of rules, but I'm not happy to, like, shit all over them just because anxiety.
Fair.
So I think I would probably stick a Troika background on the advert because it's easy to write, and then you can say, no, it's a product.
Free product.
Background's totally a product. Yeah. Why can't I have that on drive-through? But yeah, I don't see why you couldn't do that. Like, people, I'm sure, like, I don't know if it's Goodman or some of the, like, third-party D&D publishers, I'm sure they have products on drive-through that are literally just their catalog. So yeah, why couldn't you?
Totally. I mean, honestly, that's the kind of thing that I collect, right?
Yeah, ephemera.
So, whatever it is, one thing I did, it's worth it.
One thing I've done very successfully with Kickstarter, I'm always interested in, like, hacks to make platforms work in your favor, not their favor.
Sure.
So one thing I did with Wretched during the Kickstarter, and did I do it during Troll King? I think I intended to do it during Troll King and then didn't, is during the first 48 hours or week of the Kickstarter, release a product for free on itch that ties into it. So I wrote Wonderful Discovery of Witches as, like, if we hit this many followers on Kickstarter before I go live, I'll write this game live on stream. And then in the first week of the Kickstarter, I released it on itch, and I gave it away for free to all the current Kickstarter backers. I generated a download key. So then 1,000 people went and downloaded it on itch. It immediately went to the top of the itch charts, new and popular, and massive letters at the top of that page was, check out the Wretched Kickstarter. And I saw about 200 people come through to back the Kickstarter from that link. So, like,
if anybody is listening to this, right?
Yeah, figure out where you can make a feedback loop and fucking hammer it until someone tells you you're not allowed to anymore.
Yeah, that is the key to success, as far as I have ever been able to say. It's not making exceptional work. I love when you make exceptional work. I love when you make really rad shit, but, like,
it's grifting.
It's just grifting. It's just feedback loops of grifting.
It's how rich people stay rich.
Yeah.
It's why tax loopholes exist.
Yeah.
You know, it's shit. It's, in some instances, it's unethical, but I have to eat.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it, again, going back to an earlier point, if the growth of the hobby to new people has basically as a precondition small designers becoming fiscally solvent in their creations and like becoming good businesses, then even if the grift itself is unethical, it leads to the desired outcome.
Yeah. What did who did Lighthearted? I'm gonna Google it because I can. PBTA game. Kurt Potts is an itch designer. Did a Kickstarter a while back for a game called Lighthearted, and their like quick start for it was at the top of itch for maybe a month, funneling people to Kickstarter. And what he'd figured out was that the itch algorithm weights. When you publish a game on itch, you can either have like comments or you can have a BBS discussion board.
Sure.
And what he'd figured out was that the itch algorithm weights new topics on your discussion board very heavily in terms of popular. So he had a load of Let's Plays and reviews and things like that. And every day he would just go and post new topics, and it would just stay at the top of itch.
Brilliant. Just game the fucking system.
Yeah, game it. Why not? If the world's going to be run by algorithms, the world's going to be run by algorithms. Figure out how to use them to your advantage.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, because I think we've arrived at like an actually useful ending point and like some decent advice, even if it sounds deeply unethical. What
Chris cancelled.
Yeah. Just like, what else? What would you want to end on? Like what?
Fuck knows.
All right.
I don't know. Play some games.
Grift some people.
But grift the right people. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. There's your takeaway from this.
Throwing punches isn't the problem. Just make sure you punch up.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And if, like in video games, when you punch someone, some coins drop out of them, don't feel too bad.
So be it.
Grab them.
Yeah. Scoop them right up.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's good seeing you. It's been a minute since we played that DCC game with.
It has. That was really fun. That group, that whole Discord kind of fell apart because of life, which was a shame. But
most of the ones I'm in that were pandemic Discords have. But considering how specifically our countries are absolute shit shows, maybe
back into that soon.
Yeah. I think those Discords are coming back to life soon.
There's one thing I'm excited about when I quit my day job is like I'm going to have all this free time for activities, including playing games.
I'm down to do more stream games.
Sweet. Yeah.
But until then, I will see you on Twitter dealing with the shitheads and still putting out content despite it.
Muting people left, right, and center.
Just muting, not blocking?
Depends. Okay. Depends what kind of asshole they are. If they're an asshole to me, I mute them. If they're an asshole where I'm like, I don't want other people to see you, I don't want you to interact with anything anymore, I block them.
Fair. Yeah, fair enough.
If they're just shouting and I don't want to hear it, if they're just a yappy dog, I mute them. If they're a yappy dog that's also shitting on the floor, I block them.
Yeah. If what they're yapping is just like really, really disgusting slurs, doesn't matter if they're a dog.
Yeah.
That thing's possessed. And it gets
exactly.
All right, dude. Well, that's it. I'm gonna stop recording now. Bye, everybody.